Hello chess friends and welcome to Jozarov chess channel and welcome to an amazing tournament that started today. Welcome to the Meltwater Champions Chess Tour Charity Cup Finals in 2022. So this is now an amazing tournament. You know the grip. We have 16 players that are battling it out in 50 rounds of rapid play. And then of course the best next 8 players are moving up to the quarterfinal stage, are moving up to the knockout stage. So we're starting now the day one with the derby of the tournament, which is of course Liren versus Magnus Carlsen from the preliminaries of the day one. And Magnus Carlsen mentioned recently that he would love to see Liren performing in the candidate 2022, that basically Liren deserves his wild card to participate in the candidates in 2022. In my opinion, it's perfectly fine. I would really love to see Liren performing in the candidates in 2022, and he should get his wild card. But I'm really not happy with this concept of the wild card. I would always love to someone battle for his place in the candidates. I really don't like this concept at all, that someone gets simply a place in the tournament without even participating in the most important tournaments of the year. So as I said, okay, when someone needs maybe to get the wild card in 2022, okay, it's perfectly fine that it is Liren, but someone should really throw it away. This wild card, in my opinion, really sucks. It doesn't help at all. I think it always it always favors someone, and I think when whoever gets his wild card, someone will always say he doesn't deserve his place. So in my opinion, this concept is not working at all anymore in the chess world. So as I said, we'll leave that to another time, but I still think that it's something worth to analyze. The FIDE has to make some kind of a decision in order to make, I think, the chess world much happier. So okay, let's see now this beautiful game, the derby. As I said, Liren versus Magnus Carlsen. We have here really some wild things going on. So here Ding pulled off the move d4. We have knight to f6 by Magnus. So we have c4, g6, and after move f3, here we have sort of an anti-Greenfield system where of course d5 could happen, c takes d5, knight to d5, and e4, and white could have a comfortable game. So that's why Magnus goes into the more King's Indian structures with the move e6, and now he's trying bishop to g7, d6, c5. This could lead now into some King's Indian but transposition to Benoni structures when we play the move c5, because many times you have to choose if you want to break the center with the move e5 or with the move c5. When you play more e5, then we would reach the classical systems of the King's Indian. When you play the move c5, then you reach more this Benoni structure. So as I said, here with the move e6, Magnus is already announcing a Benoni structure. So here after move e6, we have e4, so Ding gets his spaces in the center. Don't try out this tactic, knight to e4, f takes e4, queen to h4 is not working in this particular scenario, because still king to e2 can be played after queen to e4. You could cover yourself, and now after knight to c3, I think white would solve all of the position problems. These tactics are working sometimes, but not with only the queen attacking. You need to include more pieces in the game, but it's, I think, always worth to study this tactic. When you include more pieces in the attack, it could really work. So consider it sometimes, but of course it's not working in this position. So after move e4, we have now the Benoni move sort of by Magnus Carlsen, the move c5, d5, perfectly fine here by Liren. After d6, knight to c3, e takes d5, c takes d5, and we have reached now sort of a same-ish attack against King's Indian slash Benoni structures here by Magnus Carlsen. So the same-ish attack is this preparation to play the move f3, and it gives white always a beautiful flexibility, because the spawn center here gives you really spaces that allows you here sometimes even to stay with the king in the center. So what black could face here is really an early flank attack with bishop to g5, bishop to e3, queen to d2, then g4, h4, h5. So this could be really a brutal already attack against black's kingside castling. But here Liren after move bishop to g7, in my opinion, played a very annoying concept, which is now similar to the Steiner attack. When you play the Steiner attack of the same-ish variation of the King's Indian, then you play the move bishop to g5. And okay, this bishop will not stay there forever. What we want to get here is this move h6 that Magnus Carlsen also pulled off, because what you want to get here is a provocative move by black. And here you see Liren provoked already the move. Okay, we have to retreat. You don't want to, of course, play bishop to f6, then you would lose, I think, the battle on dark squares. Here bishop to d4 could also happen, but after move bishop to e3 and king a6, of course a4, we're not allowing here the move b5. What we could do now from white perspective is a very annoying queen to d2, and you see now the h6 becomes now a clear target. So here kingside castling, we have queen to d2 and now rook to e8. Here the problem about this position is you could maybe take, but the move rook to e8 is very annoying to handle. Then probably this tactic is working. This is now a really familiar tactical shot that I've played several times when I played the King's Indian myself, and I pulled off many times the tactic, lost some games, won some games in this line. From black's perspective, the idea is clear. For instance, if now let's flip the board, let's see a little bit black's perspective here. If you take knight takes e4, then you get this stunner, queen to h4, you have to cover yourself, queen takes h6, queen takes h6, bishop to h6. But now here's the problem, knight to e2 could happen, and you see now the pawn on d6 becomes now a long-term weakness. So you lose your d6 pawn, but still you have some you have also the bishop pair here from black's perspective, so maybe you can compete now in a decent way in this position. So Liren probably knows, of course, his theory. That's why he played after move rook to e8 a calmer move. He plays now the move bishop to c4, developing simply the light square bishop. We have now knight to d7 and now bishop to e2. Here Liren plays really sort of a zigzag move with the bishop, but he's hoping for that Magnus Carlsen locks the e file. We have seen that this tactic with bishop to h6 and then knight to e4, queen to h4 is only working when the rook is controlling the e file, because then the knight is opening the e file against white's king. Now when the knight comes on e5, actually bishop to h6 is perfectly fine, and Magnus plays knight to e4, the same tactic. But now after move knight to e4, we have queen to h4 by Magnus. Okay, you have your fun, but now with the move g3, this is pretty much forced here by both sides. After queen to h6, bishop to h6, now comes this move, and it's a huge difference, because in the previous line that we have seen, the rook was on the e file, and the move knight on f6 was not possible because of the pin by the rook against the knight. Now knight to f6 is perfectly fine, and now Magnus Carlsen is already in serious troubles. I'm not sure if Magnus Carlsen really wanted to play this line, or did he make a mistake here, but really beautiful tactics already by Liren, and suddenly he has really a comfortable game. So here in the continuation, we have king to f8, knight takes e8, king takes e8, and now h4 here by Liren. We have bishop to d7, h5, really cool moves here by Liren. He wants to open files, because when you're playing maybe a rook versus minor piece middle game / end game, you should open your files for the rook, because if this position gets too blocked out, if the pawn structure gets really cemented, then of course the minor pieces are good. The rooks will not come into the game easily. So that's why here Ding is of course trying to open some files, maybe get the rook on the 7th rank where it could control really so important files, important squares. So here in the continuation after move h5, Magnus had to close the position. He's not allowing here the rooks to come into the game. So after move g5, we have knight to h3, we have g4, and after f takes g4, knight to g4 here, Liren simply takes. He's not tolerating any pieces here by Magnus Carlsen on his side of the board. After move bishop to g4, we have now knight to f4, and now the idea is clear here for white. What Liren is hoping for, that he trades maybe one of these bishops for the knight. So what Liren doesn't want to get here is that Magnus Carlsen continues the game with this powerful bishop here. Of course, Liren still is much better because he has the rook against the minor piece, but sometimes it's really hard in chess to play against a bishop pair. Even if you have maybe a rook and a knight against your opponent's bishop pair, still it's really an unpleasant game. I've played several times maybe with the rook and a knight against the bishop pair, and sometimes I even lost the games because I really didn't find good opportunities. I didn't find any attacking opportunity. So here Magnus will not immediately trade off, of course, his bishop for the knight. If you do that, of course, g takes f4, and then the position is more and more simplified. A rook and the bishop against two rooks is simply losing here for black. So that's why Magnus really needs to stay with his bishop pair on the board. So here king to d7, king to f2, bishop to g7, and now rook to king to g2. If you of course take here, then you get attacked, and then the rook will come on b7, so you lose the battle here again on the 7th rank. So here after move knight to f4, king to d7, as we said, king to f2, king to g2, we have bishop to f5, and now a very important move here by Liren, king to f3, including simply the king into the attack. Now g4 is also a beautiful opportunity. So here in the continuation we have now this move bishop takes b2, but now rook to b1, really beautiful move, bishop to b1. Now Ding sacrifices back his rook, but now with these two connected pass pawns, the game's basically over here for Magnus Carlsen, because after bishop to e5 we can simply take with the check. Here you have to step back, and now here Ding simply pushed the pawn further, although probably a more accurate way here is to play knight to d3, threatening simply takes, and now we can still play our idea g4, g5, h6 and similar stuff. So the problem for black is that the rook is simply stuck to the defense of the 8th rank. So here after move rook to b7, as said, king to e8, g4 here by Ding Liren. We have rook to c8, and now we're simply pushing pawn further, g5. We have c4, and now g6. After g6 we have h6 g6. Now king to f8. Magnus Carlsen needs now to play actively with this king, and now we have knight to e6. Although there are many opportunities, but as I said, in my opinion, this move knight to d3 was really necessary for Ding Liren to attack at least the bishop. There is always this positional threat, there was at least this positional threat that the pieces are traded off, and Magnus Carlsen has also his pass pawn that is supported by the rook. So Ding Liren missed already some ideas, but here after king to f8, Magnus is really battling hard for his draw here. So knight to e6, we have king to g8, we have king to e2. Magnus simply pushed the pawn further, king to d1, and here we have a5. Of course, this idea to push the pawn immediately further is not working because you don't have any checks. Bishop to f4 is not working, and also bishop to b2 is not working. Both of these squares are really controlled here. So in the continuation after move king to d1, we have now a5 by Magnus, and now king to c2. Very important move here by Ding Liren to stop here black's progress on the queen side. So instead of this move, you have to play, I think, c2, although as I said, king to c1 is perfectly fine. This move bishop to f4, bishop to b2 is not working immediately, but as a long-term threat, sort of, this is the only way to prolong the game somehow. But after move a5 the game's basically over. Here Ding Liren plays the powerful blockade and now controls the further progress of this pawn. So we have rook to a8, rook to b5, we have bishop to f6, and now Ding attacks further this weak pawn on d6, bishop to e5, we have rook to b7, we have bishop to f6 again, and now very important move here, rook to c7, attacking the pawn with this Tarash rule. The Tarash rule says that you should bring your rook behind your enemy's pawns. Now the rook is controlling further this the c file. The problem is always for Magnus Carlsen that he cannot include his rook into the game, because you can also checkmate it. You see, this pawn is controlling these two squares, and the knight is controlling the g7. For instance, if you try something, let's see, you play something like this, you see, you get checkmated. You can cover yourself, of course, only with the bishop, but this would be a beautiful checkmate pattern here that Ding Liren has prepared here. So that's why Magnus Carlsen's rook is a little bit paralyzed. His bishop is also paralyzed. The pawn is okay, it's a strong piece, but of course it's now blocked out by the king on c2. So always the checkmate threat here on c8. We have bishop to e5, now king to d3. We have bishop to f6, now king to e4. Now Ding Liren plays very active with the king. We have king to bishop to e5, king to f5. We have a rook to b8, and now very cool move again, king to g5, rook to e8, king to h6, and here after rook to e8 we have a g7 here by Ding Liren. So this is already a bad position again for Magnus Carlsen. You see, his pieces are paralyzed. He cannot really move any piece. Now king to g6 is opportunity. So even some ideas, then rook to f7, rook to f8 is of course here a possibility. So this is now completely winning endgame here for Ding Liren. In this position, Magnus Carlsen resigns. So really beautiful attack by Ding Liren, especially this endgame technique. As I said, Magnus had to play, I think, this move c2, but still it was a much better continuation for Ding Liren. Really beautiful sort of Steiner attack here by Ding Liren, and as I said, with this win, I think Ding Liren proves that he deserves his place in the candidates. But as I said, the candidates should be really a different way how to go there, and this will be really in subject for some other videos. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed the game. I really enjoyed it a lot. Really great game by Ding Liren. Mortal attack. If you want to see more brutal games from chess history, check out my commented chess games, the best chess games of all time series. Here's also the link. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.